Hi, my name is Michael Buckley, and this is a common ring I get asked to actually make. People want to know, how do you make the gallery, and how do you put the design on, and how do you cut the ring finger hole. So I've got various ways of showing you. So let's jump into ArtCam and show you how I do a ring like this. Alright, so if you have a photograph, like I did, let me show you how to extract some information off the photograph. So to open the photograph, you go to Open Model. Okay, it's going to come up with this dialog box, accept it all, making sure that you set the origin to center and that you're working in metric. And then click on OK. And what you want to do is you need to know one accurate measurement of this ring. Okay, so I emailed them and they told me that the center diamond was 5.2. So what I did was I went to assembly, grabbed the circle tool, and I just try to get, even though this is not looking straight down, I might be able to get pretty close. I would say that's about as close as I can get to the size of that stone. Alright, do I have to be exactly? No, we don't have to be exactly. So let's go ahead now and let's change the size of this image to match the vector that we've just drawn. The moment the vector, you can see, is roughly 136 millimeters, but we know our stone is 5.2, so we're going to scale it so that this vector goes down to 5.2. All right, so we're going to come up to models, and we're going to set size, and we're going to put 5.2 inside there. Okay, make sure you're on a selected vectors. It normally picks up the vector if you do have a vector selected, and click on OK. Alright, so if you select the circle again, you'll notice that the width and height has become 5.2. So what does this help us? With us scaling the image down to an exact size, or as close to the actual size as possible, we can now take measurements of this ring. So for argument's sake, I can take the measuring tool. I can go, well, let's see approximately, we were told this ring is almost squares. So since I can't get a top and bottom view because it is a slight angle, but the left and right view should be pretty accurate. So you can see around about there, it's approximately 14. Okay. And we can now measure once again the thickness of the ring there. You can see it's approximately a millimeter wide. I can also measure, if I zoom in here, that stone there, I can see now is approximately 2.6, 2.5. This stone here is going to be approximately a 2.2, 2.1 around there. So you can see we can get very good information off this. What we can also do while we're here to help us with our drawing is we can sort of draw a box approximately the size of our center stone. Oops, let's make sure that was square. I didn't check that. Let me go and delete that and do it again. So let's make sure that this is square. Make sure it's square, and then go back to rectangle, create, and let's do the outside as well while we're doing that. So we know that was roughly 14. So let's set this to 14. Square, back to rectangle, create. And last but not least, let's just trace this outside edge here. So we can go to the polyline tool. And let's just click once, twice, grab the corners, come back to there. Okay, and hit the space bar once, so it keeps the tool open. Let's go to another corner there, come down to roughly centers about there to about there and back to there as well. All right, so we can go into some node editing, just make this into an arc. Let's bring this down just a little bit. All right, so this is just to give us a rough idea. We're going to redraw these ourselves, obviously. but it'll just give me a rough idea where everything is, and it'll make my drawing time just a little easier. So let's bring that in a bit, to an arc as well. All right, this as well, arc, 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 and arc. Just drag that in. All right, so that sort of very quickly helped us just get a rough idea of how big and where everything is. Obviously, we're going to, as I said, we're going to redraw these again. All right, so with that done, we can now select all of this, and we can right click and copy. All right, so we're done with this model. We are now going to go into a new project. So we can now go File, New. Project is what we want to go into. And you can save this. We don't really need this information anymore, so I'm going to say no. All right, so now we are inside a project. The next step is to go to, and let's create a model. So this is where your model sits. The moment you highlight it, it brings up these models that you have here. Okay, so these 3 models here and these 2 here, I like to think of them as basically ring project models. This would be working from the side of the ring. This would be working with the ring turned sideways. In other words, if you were making a wedding band, it wouldn't be rotated this way. It would be rotated long and thin, and it would be extremely hard to work and draw. But the reason why we have this means this model has been turned to line up with the milling machine. So it's very seldom you would use this model here. Now this model here is if you were to lay your left hand straight down on a piece of paper, looking down on your hand is the view you would be looking at if you were going to start to draw the ring. This would be a rotary axis folder, which would be a ring wrapped this way, as you normally would wrap a ring. And this would be the head wrapped the opposite way. Okay. So we need to open up one of these rooms. So you want to open up the room that keeps the part orientated with ArtCam's World Center. So out of all of these, this model right here, which is a 3-axis blank, okay, not the 3-axis vertical blank, just the plain 3-axis blank, is looking straight down onto your hand. So you'd be looking at your ring a finger, that would be the view looking straight onto the top. So this is what you want to open up. So I've already gone and opened this up for you. So what you would do is you would hit the plus sign, and the top plate is basically the model looking straight down onto your hand, and the ring is a size 7. So you double click and it opens it up. Okay, so with the model open, you're going to right click and we're going to paste. Right, so here we have the artwork. So the first thing you'll notice about the drawing is that the outside edge had a slight curve, rounded on the corners, slight curve, round on the corners. So now you would start to tweak the drawing so that it matches closer to the design you originally want it to be. Right, so you go to E4 Edit, and you can start to fillet the corners, and you can start to node edit and offset these inwards and add stones on. In order to save time and to stop the boringness, I've already gone and done all those layers for you. So what I want you to do is to go and expand your vector layers right here, your vector layers. So you're going to expand it out, and you will see I've made some layers for you. So right now this is on your default layer. We do not want to see your default layer. So let's bring up your leaf design. So we're going to bring up the leaf design by itself. You can see I've rounded everything off. And let's start to create this shape. Another thing that I want you to look at is, can you see this model is slightly curved? Actually, it looks like it's slightly concave. It's not dead flat. It's got a very slight to it. All right, so let's go back into ArtCam. All right, so we're going to start off building your relief. The relief is going to be built on layers as well. Your relief layers sit here. This is the front and the back view. So let's go to your 3D view and we can see. Right, so you've got a front view and you've got a back view. Okay, so you've got front and back views. There's nothing on there at the moment. But these views reflect what's ever on these layers right here. So if you were to go over to the plus sign and hit the plus sign on both the front and the back, you'll notice that there are layers. There's a layer and there is a layer. At the present, this is the layer we are working on here. But you can have as many layers as you like inside here. So you can start off with as many free, clean pieces of paper as you can to actually make the shape that you're going to on. And that's the nice part about working in layers, is that you don't have to create a new project every time you are making a new layer. All right, so with the front layer activated, we are going to rename this layer top plate. Actually, no, let's call it leaf design. That would be nicer. L-E-A-F-D-E-S. So, leaf design is the shape we're going to actually make here. Since we're going to be working on the front and back at the same time, and when you want them to have the same name, okay, we're going to copy the front and back layers in between each other. So let's start off by changing the name, which is what we've done. Selecting the outside curve, as I've done there now. Bring up the shape editor. And you can see that I've started to set a very slight dome. So you're going to go to add. The dome is going to be at an angle of 13, which is just a very gentle curve. Okay. When you're done, I'm going to turn the zero plane off. When you're done, you're going to hit apply, which immediately wants to add the dome on again. But instead of it adding on again, you're just going to click cancel, and then it won't add it on again. All right, so this is our starting point. Okay. So since we want to put a slight taper on this, I don't want to have to build the shape upside down, because it's impossible to get a taper that points downwards while you're working on your front relief. You can only get that to happen on the back. So what I'm going to do, rather than have to build the shape on the back as well, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to duplicate this layer. Okay, so now we've got exactly the same layer here. I'm going to go to this layer and I'm going to right click again, and I'm just going to say swap sides. So it's going to put that layer onto the back. All right, so now we've got two layers, one layer on the front and one layer on the back. This layer here, I'm going to go and delete so it doesn't cause any confusion. So we've got, let's have a look, we've got a layer on the back. Let's turn this off. We've got a layer on the back that has that exact curve. And we've got a layer on our front that has that exact curve. So when we view both the front and the back, what's going to happen? They're going to cancel each other out. That's what the first goal is that we're trying to achieve. All right, so working on the back, let's bring up our drawing vectors again. Okay, so working on the back, let's turn off our default layer. In fact, these layers, whatever's on our default layer, I'm just going to select and delete, because we don't really want those lines and they're going to be in the way all along. All right, so working on the leaf pattern right there, working on the leaf design, make sure this is highlighted like it is. Okay, we're going to select the leaves themselves. Okay, so in the vector section, I've selected the outside of our leaves. Okay, in the vector section. Then I'm going to go down to your relief layers. Okay, and I'm going to select the back layer, because whatever is on the outside of our shape, when we build in a taper, automatically gets done on the back relief first. So I'm going to start off working on the back relief. So I've selected the outside of our leaf pattern. I'm bringing up the shape editor now, And I've set the shape editor to an angle of 83. Okay. I'm going to change this for now. We'll come back to that in a second. And I want to go downwards, correct? Because we want to subtract this downwards. So by putting a slight taper on here, what this does is it makes our model very smooth. Okay. If this was a 90-degree angle, we would start to get pixel lines going down here. This is one way of starting to work extremely smooth. Now, we don't need it going all this way down. So we're going to limit the height, or we're going to make the thickness of the part. So we're going to go right here. We're going to limit its depth so it doesn't keep going down to infinity. We're going to limit it to a depth of 0.9. Now, you can change and you can make the thickness of your plates excuse me, whatever you want them to be. Okay, when I'm happy with this, I'm going to hit apply, which immediately wants to add it on again because this is all live. But I'm just going to cancel because I don't need it to add it on twice. All right, so that we did on the back. So if we were to turn off the front, you can see we've actually eaten a layer down into the back. But let's keep both of these views on. Let's make sure they both are turned on. So now it's time to put the detail inside the actual leaves. It's time to cut what a setter would normally cut the pave material away inside there. So we're going to go to the front relief this side, which is this layer right here. We're going to highlight it. We're going to select all three of those lines. We're going to bring up the shape editor again. And I've set the angle to 35. I've made it an angle, obviously a square. I've set it to 35 and it's on your subtract. So you can change this angle, but obviously you don't want to eat a massive hole inside there. Okay, so I set it just basically down to 35 and I made sure it was on your subtract. Okay, so now we've got this nice little angle. What would normally be a bright cut. A setter would normally go in there with tools and he would carve out this angle. So we get this to apply again and then we cancel out. Okay, so the next thing to do is to cut the actual stones all the way through. So I select the stones, bring up the shape editor again. And once again, we make a peak. Okay, and dragging this up and down, we just want to cut a nice tapered hole into it, somewhere around about 67, 68, 69, 70, around there is all good. All right, when that's done, we're going to click apply and cancel. Okay, and now we're going to add on the outside prongs first. So we don't add all the prongs on at the same time because it has a slight curve. And these have to be raised slightly higher than these on this curve. So these prongs are slightly higher than these, obviously. So we're going to select the outside prongs first. Bring up the shape editor again. Okay. And we want to change it to merge high. If we add, it's going to pick up the underlying surface. And it's going to try and imitate the underlying surface on the top. But in order to avoid that, we're going to merge high. Okay, and these you can set as high or as low as you want them to actually go. I'm happy with that. I then apply. Okay, and cancel out again. And then again, the only other thing we have to do right now is to go and select the prongs that are sitting right there. Okay. We're going to bring up the shape editor there, make sure it's on merge high again, 90 degrees, and I've given it a start height of 0.5, which pushes it up through the circle. So when this was on 0, you can see you didn't see anything, it was down there. So to push it up through the surface, I gave it a start height of 0.5, which now pushes it up through the surface. Okay, so you're going to hit apply and cancel. Right, so now would be a great time to actually save. So go ahead and save it. Right, so the only other thing to do now is we need to cut out this hole that runs through the center here. So to find that one that is actually here under your center stone, let's just turn this light on right here. So if we turn this light on, and we can select this inside line right there. Okay. In fact, this center line should have been on this layer. So let me show you. This is a great time to show you how to move lines in between layers. So at the moment, this line's on this layer, but I in fact want it to be on this layer right here. So to move it to the leaf design, all I have to do is to right click, go down to move vectors to, and I look for leaf design. So now it's on that layer. So if I turn the center stone layer off now, you can see that is now back onto the leaf layer. So now we can bring up the shape editor again, and of course all we want to do is we want to go and subtract this down through the surface. If you want to put a slight tape on, you still can. Okay, so this once again will give you a surface. Let's put this onto 0 so you can see what's going on. So this will give you a nice little cut straight down into the piece. Now this can go straight down or at an angle. It doesn't really matter because the center head will sit exactly over this. So this center head is going to be sitting over this trim work. So basically we're just making that actual trim work. So if we're happy with this as it is, we're going to apply and we're going to cancel it out. So there we go. All right, so all we have to do is to copy left over right and copy the top over the bottom. So to do that, we go to the Assistant tab. Okay, and we are going to copy the mirror tool. We're going to copy the left over right. Okay, and we're going to copy the top over the bottom. Now, the moment it doesn't look like it's done anything, and that's because we've only copied the front relief layer. If we go to the back relief layer, highlight it, okay, and we do the same up here, left over right, and then here, top over bottom, it'll get them exactly the same. All right, so the top is now done. And the reason why we did this is to show you how smooth the model itself actually is. We don't have any pixel lines or anything running up and down. All right, so the top basically is done. So it's time to add the top to the assembly. So to add it to the assembly, we go to the Assistant and we go down to the Create Mesh tool. What this does is it takes your relief, it meshes it, and it turns it into an STL. And when it's finished, it's going to add it inside the assembly folder where we can move it around, scale it, and we can export it out. So we want to, which option do we want to use? Since we created a back relief, we obviously want to close it with a back relief. If we don't, that's the kind of effect we're going to have. So if we close it with a flat plane, that's what it's going to look like because I've turned off the back relief. And we, excuse me, we don't want that. So with the back plate now activated, we want to close it with these two. So it needs to stitch the front and the back. So it'll give us the STL. So close it with the back relief option. We press on Create. And we can call this top plate. And now when we add it to the project, you'll notice the assembly sign will get a plus sign. So it tells us it's been added successfully. It's given the assembly now a plus sign. And you can see it's now added it. It's no longer a relief. Well, we still have a relief front and back, but it's converted them into an STL and it's added them into the back, into the assembly. Sorry, my mistake. All right, so the moment we add anything to the assembly, what do? We give it a hard save. All right, so it's now time to actually add on the center stone. All right, so what I did was I made a layer here for you called center stone. Okay, so we can turn back on our vectors. If you want to stay in your 3D view, you can obviously do this in the 2D view as well. So I'm going to turn this layer off by turning this light bulb off and turning this light bulb on. I can get to see the vectors for our center stone. So we do not want to build the center stone over the leaf pattern. So I need to create a new layer that starts off from fresh again. So to create a new layer on the front and the back, I can go new, and this is going to be called center stone. So it's the center diamond, enter. So I duplicate it, okay, and then I swap sides. So now I have the center layer on the back and a center layer on the front. Okay, so let's turn off the two layers we previously worked with, which are the bottom layers, and when you turn those light bulbs off, they are gone, but you still see the shape. Okay, and this to new ArtCam users, they don't understand what's going on here. It's because the assembly view is turned on. The assembly view is still in view. So this is a great time to help yourself out. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to right click on assembly. Okay, sorry, you want to click on assembly and you want to go down to your actual lamp. Okay, and you want to change that to anything other than the material color it is. I prefer to use, for example, blue wax. Okay, so from now on, whenever we see the assembly, if it's blue, we know it's the assembly STL we're looking at and not your relief layers. Because the moment I turn the assembly off and I turn our relief layer back on, it's yellow. So everything that is yellow from now on, we will know as our relief layer, and anything that's blue is the assembly layer. All right, so we want to work on our new layers on the front and back. And once again, if this is going to have a tapered box to it, we're going to start off on the back. So the outside is always on the back. So we're going to bring up the shape editor where we are. And we want to give it a very slight angle. So let's go down to, let's make the start height is on 0. Okay, and let's give it an angle of, let's say, about 85. So let's go to 85. But once again, we want to limit the height. There's no point in it going all the way down to infinity. So we want to limit the height to a height of, so it's going to stick slightly through the plate. So it's going to go down. We want it to go down at least a half a millimeter into the plate. So let's stop it off at 2.5. Okay. So 2.5. We're going to apply. Now, make sure that you are on your subtract, that you aren't on add, okay? Because if it's on add, you won't see it because it's going to be eating through the plate at the top. So make sure you're on your subtract. Okay, so we've got a nice angle, 85 degrees. We have a limited height of 2.5. We have nothing in the start height square. We're going to apply and cancel. Now it's time to work on to the inside lines. So the inside lines go where? They go onto the front layer. So you highlight the front layer and then go and highlight this layer right there. You can see it's grayed out and the light bulb is on. So the reason why we're still seeing the back is because the back layer here is turned on. So I want to see both the front and the back all the time. It gives me instant feedback to what the part is going to look like. With this selected now, we can look straight down from the top. I like to give just a very slight angle, actually. Just give just a very slight angle. Let's go and select the inside line. So what do we want here? We want this to cut slightly down. Let's go back to the drawing and look at it. You can see that the diamond sits down inside there, inside this area. So we want it to go straight down at least a half a millimeter, and then it can have some kind of a bright cut or chamfer that we want on it. So let's bring up the shape editor. So the shape editor normally starts off flat. I'll put these values onto 0. So this is where we normally start off. So we want to go, first of all, we want to go 0.5 and subtract. So it's going down. There's our 0.5 going down. And then we want to introduce an angle so we can have it a square angle, and now this angle is going up. But that's okay, it's working live. So if it's going up, you just reverse this, and you can start to see it starts to introduce this angle going all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to give it a nice gentle angle. So our stone is pretty deep as well here. So anywhere around about your 50 degrees is good. Okay, so we're going to apply and cancel out. Okay, and now we can bring up our prong. So the reason why we have this open area here is because we haven't turned on the zero draw plane. If you draw on the zero draw plane, it closes this off. All right, so grab our single prong. Let's go to shape editor. And now you need to give it a start height of 2 and make sure you're on merge high. Okay. So, wow, way too high. So let's go back to 0 and see what happens there. So 0 is the right height. 2 was way too high. 2 was what it remembered from the last use, if you remember. So you want to start height on 0, and we want to merge high. Okay, now if you want that prong a little bit higher, what do? You make your start height 0.3 for argument's sake. Now it will stand it up a little bit more. All right, so we apply and we cancel out. So the only other thing to do now is to cut this slotted section through the front. So let's go back and show you this again. So if you zoom in here, you'll see that this has a groove grooved in there. There's a groove down there, and there's a groove in there, and that breaks this up into what appears to be sort of like what would have been a princess cut actually. But you can see there's a prong here, and those are the prongs that we've drawn. So we've got these 4 prongs actually holding the stone up, but this gives the illusion of it being square. So we need to break up the solid wall by introducing these 4 U's that we have there. So we highlight this shape, press F9, make sure it's centered. Yes, it is. So we're going to bring up the shape editor. Okay, and if you subtract this shape, okay, so we want it to be this sort of, let's put this on 0. If we introduce a rounded shape and we start to subtract it down, you'll notice that it eats, on subtract, it eats part of this surface away as well. Okay, and we don't want it to go and remove the original surface we have here. We want it to just trim the wall away. So we are going to merge low. Okay, so when you're using merge low, the shape has to be in the direction that you have to cut. Okay, so there is the little slot. If you want it to come down a little bit more, you can go 0.1, and that'll bring it a little bit more. Let's go 0.3, but you'll notice that because it's on a plus, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So this needs to be on a minus because it has to cut downwards. So we go minus. And that's the other wonderful part about working live, is that you get instant feedback. You can see a mistake instantly the moment it happens. So I want it to be 0.15. Minus 0.15. Minus 0.15. Okay, that looks good. We are not eating into the, oops, bring up the shape editor again, come on. Okay, so we're not eating into our shape, we've just zeroed out. We are good to go now. We can hit apply and cancel. All right, so once again, we have to copy left over right. So we go to the assembly, we go to our relief tools, and we're going to, once again, we are going to mirror this. Left over right, and then we want to mirror top over bottom, top over bottom. All right, so the center is now done. We create a triangled mesh because once again we want to add it to the assembly. Okay, because we need to free it from the zero plane, and creating a triangle mesh actually frees it from the surface and adds it into the STL. So we want to close it once again with a back plate. So close it with a back relief. Go ahead and create. Excuse me. And we want to call this center diamond. So CEN center DI. Whoops, DIA. Okay. And add to project. Give it a hard save. And let's go and have a look at what we did. So I'm just going to go File, close the model only. Do not close the whole project down, just close the model we are working in. Okay, so we're back in the assembly area now. So let's have a look at what we did. All right, so there's the center and there's the plate. So we need to move the center diamond, move it up in the nudge area. So let's go up 1 millimeters at a time. So we're going up 1, let's go up 1 more. Yeah, that looks good right there. There we go. All right. So that is our top done. Looks very nice. Let's do a hard save. All right, so now it's time to learn how to do the gallery, which is the reason why we actually are doing this project. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways of doing it. Okay, so let's go back into our models. So we're going to put our mouse on top plate and we are going to double click. All right, so this takes us right back into the model area where we were, where we can see the front and back reliefs we just made. And if you expand the vectors, you can see these are all the vectors that we actually had. All right, so to tidy this up, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this off, turn this light on. I want the outside shape actually. So I want to put this on a new layer because I don't want to see all this while we are doing the back. So I'm going to just right click. First of all, I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to right click and say move vectors to a new layer now. All right, so here's the new layer right there. So we can turn off this layer now. Okay, and we can see this is the layer that it's on now. So I'm going to right click and rename this layer. Oops, cancel. I think I went to delete instead of rename. Yeah, let's go and rename this gallery. Okay, hit enter. And to divide these two up, you don't need to do this. I'm just going to do this quickly. Rename. Just so that I break them up. Okay, so here is the gallery, and then we have the other two layers. So right, here is the layer on its own there. So let's talk about making the gallery. So obviously we're going to need a new layer for the front and on the back. So let's go to the front layer and let's go to new layer, and we're going to call this gallery. Okay, so we're going to need a layer on the front and we're going to need a layer on the back. So you can go to the back and make a new layer as well. Gallery. All right, so I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing it. In fact, there are 3 ways of doing it. 2D view. So why am I seeing this blue? We already know, because the assembly view is turned on. Remember, we colored the assembly blue, we turn it off. And I'm still seeing something going on here. So I'm seeing something on here. So let's see which layers are turned on. The back layer on the back is turned on. If I turn it off, it's now gone. All right, so make sure that the back is highlighted and make sure that the layer is grayed out like it is there now. That's one way of knowing you're working on this layer. Okay, so starting from the back, we're going to select this vector. Okay, bring up the shape editor. And we want to change it to an angle. Okay, we want to pull the angle down. And what we are looking at is just what looks visually to be a nice angle. So it was very hard from the drawing, the photograph, to kind of see this, but this looks like maybe a 50 degree. Let's go and have a look at that and see what that looks like. Okay, so this is 79. No, it couldn't have been a 50. A 50 degree would have been way down there. It must have been about a 70. Okay, let's go to 75 is normally a good angle. Okay, 75, and let's subtract it down. So this is a tape. So if you wanted more of an angle where the shank meets, you just make it a little bit more of an angle. Okay, so now you're just going to have a little bit more of an angle where the shank meets at the bottom of the gallery. Also, if you're going to fit a wedding band up or something, then you want to try and make it flush fit. You keep on increasing the angle. All right, so we're going to stick it 75. We're going to go, okay, that's where we want it to be. And once again, to stop it from going down to infinity, we're going to limit the height. So this is kind of the tricky part. How long is this piece? Remember, we've got it limited down here, so we can cut this hole out here. Now, in this ring, I think this was extremely thin. I think this whole gallery there was probably only 2 millimeters. This might have been 3. So if we make the whole gallery, let's say 4.5 or even 5. Remember, we are trimming it away, so we have to pick a number here. So let's pick a number let's stop at 5. So we're going to say limit the height to 5. So now when we cut the hole in, it's going to just make it a little bit smaller. Now, if you want to be able to put a pattern and a design inside there, here they kind of cheated. They just made a few little U's. But if you want to put some kind of scroll work in there, you need to increase the size of this. Okay. But they just had these little fishtail U's, and I'll show you how to put a few different designs in there. So we're going to leave ours a little bit longer. In fact, let's even make it let's make it as much as 6. Okay, and we are going to apply. Now, the most important thing is the way I'm building it here is this is not upside down. If you were to add this shape, you could just use the 2-rail sweep and cut it out. So I'm going to, in this video, I know I'm bouncing around you, I'm going to show you the slightly more advanced way of doing it. Okay, so we're just going to go apply and cancel. Okay, so this is still going down, and then on the front side, once again, we work on the inside vectors. So we don't have the inside vectors already, so we're going to offset these. We're going to make them to be, let's say the gallery is 0.95 thick. We want it to go inside, and we want to offset it. All right, so working on the front layer, make sure the gallery layer now is grayed out. Bring up the shape editor again, and let's go down. Now, let's turn on both views. Let's turn on both the front and the back, and we can actually watch it as it starts to trim its way all the way through. And what we're looking for is to make sure the bottom edge here doesn't end up being a knife edge like that, because that's bad news. So we want a little bit of metal here to make sure it's thick enough. So if it's sort of 90 here, we want it to be a minimum of 90 here, or even slightly more. So I think that looks good. We're going to apply and cancel out. All right, so since this is going down, how do we cut it upwards now? Okay, so we are going to do a negative 2-rail sweep, or even a single rail sweep. So let me show you how to do a negative sweep. So this is where the back is. So we're going to go onto the back. So let's look at what is going on here. So let's turn on the reference silhouette so we can get the ring finger size hole. Here it is here. On here, finger to the top of the box. Let's say we want it to be 3. Okay, so we're going to pick 3. And now I'm going to snap this onto here. So what we're talking about here is we've decided that this is 3. Okay, so from the inside finger to the top of the plate is going to be 3. So there it is, 3. Okay, the ring finger size in diameter is 17.350. Okay, 17.350. So all we have to do is draw a box. 17.350, 17.350. Go back to rectangle and create it. Okay, so let's just bring that down. Let's bring it down over here. All right, so this line needs to sit. I'm going to snap this. Watch this. Grabbing it on the snapping point or even on the edge. I'm going to snap this right here onto the center line here. So drag that on its snapping point. Watch the cursor. It gets to snapping points. Drag it right over to the edge and it's snapped right onto the center of that line. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to make this into an arc. So we're going to go to node editing. We're going to make this into an arc. Okay, but we want the arc to go upwards because we're cutting into our piece, correct? And now these lines, we're just going to bring down so that they are right up to there. Okay, and now we just go and remove that span. So there we are. Now we can cut our groove right through the bottom of our ring. Okay, so let's bring on our reference lines again. So on the back, because we're working on the back, we're just going to make a new layer now. Okay, I'm going to do this sweep right here. So selecting this line, shift, grab our sweep. Okay, let's go to the Weave Wizard. And we are going to add that shape on. Okay, so there it is. So the reason why it's doing it is because these layers are on add. If we go to this layer and we set it to merge, it now trims our gallery away. Okay, so from now on, whatever a gallery we build, as long as this layer is highlighted, it will trim whatever shape we build onto there. All right, so now it's time to add. It's now time to add the gallery to the assembly area. Okay, so we're going to go assembly, mesh. Once again, closed with the back. Create gallery. Blank. And add to project. Okay, so looking down at this, let's get back into the right view. Okay, let's do a hard save. Okay, the very next step now is to wrap the design around the outside of our gallery. And to do that, we have to close down the model we're working to. That's why we added this to the assembly, because we have to open this up in another model. So we are actually going to go into a model called a rotary axis blank, but it's not the ring rotary because this is pointed in the right direction. If I was to use the rotary ring, I'd have to turn this 90 degrees on its side. But remember, like in the beginning, I like to keep everything orientated to ArtCam's world center. So now we're going to use the vertical, which means this vertical shaft is going to run right through the center of this. Okay, so we need to know how big diameter this needs to actually be. So looking straight down onto the top, okay, I can go to the assistant and I can start to draw a circle, and I can say, okay, without it interrupting these inside walls, the diameter of 8 in this case would be fine. Okay, 8.3 to be exact, 8.368 even to be even closer. So 8 would be fine. Okay, so now I know, I write down 8, I cancel, and I go okay, file, close model, because we are finished working where we are. And now we're going to go to the assembly, turn it on. Okay, turn these two layers off because we don't want to see them. Turn both of these off. And you're going to click on rotary blank, and you're going to center it. Make sure it's centered in ArtCam's world center first. So we're going to center the object and it moves up. The reason why it moved up is because we made it below the zero plane. The zero plane was actually up here and we needed it centered where the zero plane would be going through the center of the piece. All right, so now we are going to go into models. Now you're going to go into models, and you're going to open up the Rotary, and we already said the diameter going through it needs to be 8.3. Your thickness, okay, the thickness is, actually if I'd have stayed here, let me show you this, it would be easier to work out if you stay inside this model and look at it. So, looking down, okay, your thickness is, let's bring up the vectors again here so you can actually see. So let me just draw the circles so you know what I'm talking about. So that was the 8.3. All right, so let's go back into here. Your diameter is 8.3. Your thickness is from this edge of the diameter to, I guess, the outside corner, but it's got to be somewhere in between the two. So let's go and measure. So this measurement from there to there is about 3. If you look over there, is about 3. And to there is about 6. So we want to meet somewhere in between. Okay, so let's say the thickness is 4.5, would be somewhere in between 3 and 6. So let's go 4.5. Okay, the height is, how thick is our piece here? Okay, how thick is the model? So we know the model, let's just add in 10, will give us more than enough space to work in. Since the model is only about 5, we're just going to add in 10. So when it opens up, there's going to be plenty of space on either side. The border we can leave on 1. We have more than enough space, but we're going to call this gallery design. Okay, and then we're going to accept it. Since we've saved that already. All right, so it's opened up a Rotary folder, okay, that's pointing straight up and down. So at the moment, the zero plane's running, let's hide this away, the zero plane is running right through the center of our square. All right, so we need to import this STL, we need to bring this STL back into a layer on its own so we can see the part we made in a relief folder. So we need to basically create a Rotary of this STL so it brings it back into a relief so we can carry on working on it. So in order to do that, you put your mouse on here, turn it on, put your mouse on here, and say create a Rotary relief. And what it does is it unwraps this onto a layer and it turns it from an STL back into a relief layer again. Because we can only work on our relief layers, we can't really work and do designs on STLs yet. So I don't want to see blue, so blue we're going to hide away. Remember, we turn off the assembly area, and there's your Rotary. And that's why we centered it as well. Because if we didn't center the Rotary, a gallery, if we didn't center the blank in the assembly area, this would have been way down here somewhere. So by centering it, puts it back into the center of this model as well. All right, so now it's time to wrap our design around the actual piece. It's time for us to wrap everything on here. So the reason why you have this sticking through here like this is because our layers are turned on. So this is the layer we just imported. The layer underneath we don't want. So let's go and delete it. So let's go to the back layer and see what's happening, because when we imported it, it made a layer on the front and it makes a layer on the back. So there are the layers on the back. This layer here at the bottom we don't want. We turn it off. And because we don't want it, I'm going to go and delete it as well. All right. So this is what the front and back reliefs look like. They look exactly the same as the model was here. So in theory, we could actually have built this shape inside this area here as well, which is another video for another day. All right, so now it's time to put your pattern around the outside. So let's go have a look how we do that. All right, let's do a save and let's go back to the 2D view. It's very hard to work in a wrap folder. So let's see what's going on here. So we bring up this preview layer here. This is what the back folder looks like. Let's go click on the front. Make sure we're working on this layer, and this is what the front layer looks like. All right, so we're just going to double click in this area here. And because this is lower than the zero plane, if you look down here, you can see it's slightly lower than the zero plane. We are just going to select the color white, as you can see in the shape editor, and we're going to merge high. We're going to apply and cancel. So the first thing we want to do is we want to trace a vector around the outside. That's simple. So we just go to this tool right here, create a boundary from a relief. What this does, it looks for anything that has a change in height. So the zero plane is completely zero. The moment it starts a change in height, it's going to draw a relief. It's going to draw a vector around that. So there it did. It drew a vector all the way around. So we're going to cheat on this. We're going to just zoom in here, grab these two end nodes using the arrow key. I'm just going to drag it all the way out. And I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. Okay, zoom in there and just grab those end nodes and do the same thing. Just move them all the way out. Okay. By doing that now, I'm going to offset them inwards. So I'm going to offset this inwards by however thick you want the bottom border and the top border to be. So let's say you want them to be 0.9, just for argument's sake. We want it to be inwards, and we're going to offset. So this would virtually be the opening where the gallery would now be inside this area here. Okay. So let's go back to the photograph and look. Okay, so this is open all the way around. So this is the opening. So we've left a little border here, and we've left this edge here. So to put a pattern inside here, remember there's a shank on the side here. So it's pointless opening up inside the shank area there. Now you can open it even all the way around and grow it. That would be fine. Or you can leave this area here closed where the shank is going to attach onto the side. If you want to close it off where the shank is going to attach, remember the shank sits in the center of this and the center of this. This is the front because that's the ring finger hole. Then it goes to the shank side and then it goes on to the back side. So we know our shank is going to be 3 in width. So we make this 3. And we need to paste this on. So I'm going to bring up the paste tool, this tool right here. Okay, and we want to put on 3. Okay, so we're going to select this end one, and we're going to ungroup all, deselect the one by holding down the shift key and deselect one, keeping the other 2 selected. You're going to group these. And you're going to press the F9 key that will put them in the center. So this is the area where the shank is going to attach onto the head. So we don't have to put a pattern inside this area here. Now, as I said, you can put a pattern inside here, but for those who want to block it out, I'm just showing you how to block it out. All right, so if you were blocking this out, we need to just trim. That's the area to trim away, and that's the area there we're going to trim away. All right, so you can, if you wanted to, cut these vectors and close them off. We don't really have to do that because we're going to use a color to actually help us. All right, so let's start to do the drawing of whatever shape you want on here. Now, they in this image have got little U's. Okay, well, the U's would be extremely easy to add on here. We just put a bunch of circles along here and we zero them away. But I'm going to show you how to add a little bit more of a detail in here. So let's go back and bring up our circle. Okay, let's move this out the way so we can see what's going on here. So I'm going to start in the center and say, okay, so we want one circle to be there, and immediately I'm just going to go to this here and tell it to correct the vector for the height. And the reason why it has to correct the vector for the height is there's a difference between this height and this height and this height, and we're working with a rotary folder, which means we're working with your distortion. Okay, so whenever you have a distortion, you have to let the software correct it for your distortion. So let it go and correct the first circle. So I'm just going to move this circle out the way so we correct the first circle. So we wanted to get the height from the reading underneath. So that's the height of the first one. So the second one would go over there, somewhere over there, because that's also, it might not shrink as much actually. But let's see what it does. Let's do the same there. Get height from the relief there as well. Okay, so there are two that we have. Just move it slightly up. And let's put a few more circles on here. So let's put another circle, let's say there. And let's put another circle there. Now, because we have this gap, we might have to grab all of these and move them across. So we get our first circle this side, the second circle here, because now it fits, everything fits in. But let's see what happens here when I correct this vector. Now you can do them all at the same time actually. So select them both and we can do them all at the same time. Alright, so we might need to make a couple of these a bit smaller, hey? Otherwise everything is going to touch here. So you need to leave a little bit of a gap in between, so at least to allow the tool to fit in between. So this looks like it's a tad big. So I'm just going to offset this inwards. Okay, holding down my control key, I'm just going to drag this a little bit inwards so it leaves us a little bit of a gap there, and maybe the same here, just a little bit. All right, so let's delete that line and let's delete that line there. All right. So now we can space these a little bit more evenly so the gaps look good. Make sure they're centered with the drawing. All right, there we go. We select those, we group them, and then we mirror them across the model. Okay, we grab all of those and we group all of those. All right. So now we can paste these 3 times on and they are all done. All right, so we need to offset these. So we grab them all. We go to the offset tool. First of all, let's put them where they're meant to be. Let's just move them a little bit up. Now we're going to offset them by however thick you want these to be. So let's say they're going to be 0.65, just for argument's sake. Let's go inwards. Offset them. These you can see are really small. So let's undo that move. Let's make them 0.45 is fine. Even half a mil is fine. So let's take half a millimeter. That looks better. And we're going to group those. This could have been a tad larger, but you guys, in order to save time, I would have actually made this one a fraction bigger. But all right, so here we go. We are ready now to remove this area. So we're going to use, a color will be the best thing for us to use. So we're going to select all of that. To bring up the color, we have to turn off the preview layer. So we bring up our color, and now we're going to flood full. So I'm going to lock it now, for now. So we're going to flood fill that blue, and we're going to select that and those layers, which is the inside, the outside, and the square, and we're going to make those red. All right, so just the blue now. So just the blue, we are going to use, go and subtract your shape in. Okay, so I leave this up to you to actually decide which goes. You can stop there. You can go all the way through. You can punch the hole all the way out. I'll leave it up to you to decide whatever looks nice or best for you. But that looks good right where it is there now. Okay, so we're going to apply and cancel. And we're going to do a hard save. Alright, so we are now going to create a triangled mesh of this piece, because basically we are done. So we're going to create a triangle mesh. Okay, so we're going to create a mesh, and we're going to close it with a back relief, because we made a back relief. Remember, it imported the back relief. We didn't make one, but when we created a rotary from the original model, it created a back relief. So we need to make sure that it stitches both of these together. So close with the back, create. Now this is the only time, because you're working with a rotary file, I want you to look inside here. Sometimes you get these pixels that are shown here. Okay. So what we need to do to remove these pixels, we're not going to create a mesh of this yet. Okay, so we're going to take this line that's right here. Okay, and we're going to offset it very, very small amount. We're going to offset it. So let's go to the offset tool. Select it again. We're going to offset it maybe 0.1 inwards. Okay, and then we're going to grab this. Even a 0.1 is a bit much. We could have made it 0.001 even. So let's go ahead and do that so you can see it done. Let's go 0.05. Let's go 0.05 inwards. Okay, so there it's slightly inwards. I'm going to now zero the rest of this out. So I need to keep everything inside this vector. Whoops. So let's go select that and zero. Come on. Zero the rest of the material away. Right, so because we've zeroed the rest of this away, we don't have an overlap between the front and the back anymore. Those spikes came because they didn't quite, the front and the back didn't quite agree with each other. They were, and because of maybe the resolution we're working into, it just leaked a few of those spikes. So by just trimming the front slightly smaller than the back, it should fix the pixels. So let's go ahead and create with a back relief now. And now you can see the pixels are gone because we trimmed the front slightly smaller than the back. Okay, so Gallery Design, Final, Add to Project. Okay, and we're going to do a hard save. All right, and we are done working here now. So File, Close Model. Let's have a look what we have now. All right, so we've got the solid gallery sticking through. And let's bring up our top plate and our center diamond. Now the center diamond is part of the top plate. So I'm going to put the center diamond inside there. You can just drag and drop. So drag and drop. So both of them are inside this. And now I'm going to move this upwards. So it just sits, let's look at the drawing. It just sits slightly, on top. It's slightly raised on top. So let's go 0.1. There we go. All right, now I can show you how to round this off as well. I forgot to show you that actually. But that is so far looking good. All right, so now it's time to add on the shank. Another thing I also want you to notice is how smooth this model is. Okay. There's no real edges, and I mean we have a little bit obviously where they've stitched them together, but you don't have those horrible lines running all over the place. And along the prongs there we have, I should have showed you how to fix that as well. But there'll be lots more videos for you to look at. All right, so it's looking very good actually. This will render very nicely as well. All right, so let's go and stick on the shanks. So models, we're going to go to rotary axis this time. And you know what? Let's pick one of these out of here. Let's just use one of these templates. Show you how to use a template at the same time. All right, so we're going to create a tapered shank. Actually, no, the shank will be the same width all the way along. So it's a size 7. It's a square shank, size 7. The width is 3. Border can be 3. And the thickness, let's make the thickness 3 as well. So 3, 3, 3, and a resolution. So what do these numbers mean? This is the thickness of the ring. Okay. When it opens up the artwork, which is going to be a long rectangle, it's asking you how much space do you want between the edge of the ring and the edge of the model. You always need more space. So the border, we're going to have 3. So it'll be 3 on each side, which is 6, and 3 is 9. So when the model opened up, it's going to be 9 millimeters wide by whatever the length of a size 7 is probably 70 millimeters long or somewhere around there. The thickness is your distortion height, and since we don't have much of a thickness, let's make it 1.75. It's the average thickness between the bottom of the ring and the top. And we're going to go to next. So using the wizards, what it does is it actually pre-draws a shape for you where you don't have to. Let's just close that out. And all right, so you can see the model is in the wrong area. So let's go. And I already moved the top plate. I should have showed you. So it all sits as 1. The gallery now needs to go inside this folder as well. Okay, the gallery needs to go inside this folder. Otherwise, when you move them, they're going to be moving independently on their own. Although we could move the entire assembly at this point, we could move the whole assembly up. If we did that, the gallery blank, which is this one here, would also move with it. So I don't want the gallery blank. I want the gallery blank to stay where it is. So I'm just going to drag and drop this inside. Just since this is the final top, I'm just going to drag it inside there. Okay, and then we're going to rename this top ring, so we know that's the whole of the top of the ring. And now I'm going to move it up. So let's move it up 10, and 10 was a bit much, so let's come down 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just see it to cut nicely through the bottom of the ring. One more maybe. There we go. So there we go. All right, so the model now in ArtCam's World Center has moved from the center all the way up. So now we can start to add the shank and thicken the shank up here. So what I want to do is I want to get the assembly to actually draw that, and by doing that I've just closed down the wizard. I realized the wizard is just closed down. We do not have the wizard for this blank open anymore. You see that? The wizard is just closed down. So we'll have to do these sweeps by ourselves. No problem. All right. So this line here now needs to be moved. Let's move this out the way. Let's drag this a bit smaller. Put it over there. And we can get that to pin itself away now. So this line now needs to move. I'm going to insert a point. And I'm going to drag that up. Okay. I'm going to curve this shank now. Grabbing that handle, curve it. Let's pull those notes a tad out more. Okay, and this needs to come down now. So I'm going to convert this into a line. So right click. These are the shortcuts. These letters on the end are the shortcuts I'm in fact using. But to convert spam to a line, you can see if I pressed L on the keyboard, it takes it into a line. So pressing L, hovering my mouse over the line, pressing L converts it into a line. Bring that down to there, and I'm actually going to insert a little point I for insert. I'm just going to drag this just a tad more into the model so it sinks a little bit more into the model. That looks good right there. Okay, so I'm going to rebuild this shape. So shift and delete resets the artwork back to its zero plane, back to the zero plane. Let's re-sweep that shape. So connecting them both, I can connect one cross section. Actually, this cross section I'm going to make straight. See this cross section, set it a slight angle. Let's just make these cross sections straight. So select them both, go to X, select them both, go to X. And maybe it's nicely, even if we comfort fit the edges again. So let's just, you know what, let's remove that. Let's take our square, excuse me. Let's just, let's go back to E for edit, and let's just drag these corners inwards a bit, just to softly round them off. Right, so I remove that section, and that section. There's our cross section. So now our ring will be just slightly rounded when we 1, 2, 3. Whoops, 1, 2, 3 cross section, then the silhouette, and then we just do a standard sweep. So let's have a look. It's coming through way into our drawing here, so I need to pull it a little bit back. So to pull it back, you grab these here, and we're just going to pull it a little bit back to about there. Pull this one also a little bit back. All right, let's see what that does. So shift and delete resets your work surface again. Still going way through. All right, so the top now is starting to swell out, which is fine. So let's bring the bottom. This is interesting. The bottom is always going to stick through, so I'll show you how to trim the bottom away. All right, so we're kind of happy with that. Except if you look at the photograph, it is flat. Okay, so this one is flat, and then I was going to show you how to put on a point, which we'll do in the next video. All right, so we leave it flat. Okay, and actually let's bring it in just a tad more. So let's grab that node and just bring it in just a tad more. I'll tell you what will look nice if we actually gave this ring a little bit of a flow there. Now it'll have a little bit of a curve. That would look nice. All right, so shift and delete. Let's do it again. You know what I'm going to do? I'm also going to make the shank slightly thinner. I think it's a bit wide. So selecting them both, bringing up the transform tool, uncheck them. Let's just make this 2.75. Apply and close out the tool. So now the shank is slightly smaller. 1, 2, 3. Let's go to the sweep tool again. I could have still made it a little bit smaller, so it would have made the gallery look a little bit nicer. Alright, so let's do that once more. Let's shift and delete, and let's just make the shank just a tad thinner again. Bring up the transform tool. Let's make it 2.5. Apply. There we go. Alright, let's do the sweep again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and sweep. There we go. That looks much nicer. Alright, so we're going to hollow out this back side now. So the hollow out, once again, we go to the back relief, and I'm just going to copy and paste this vector. So Control C, Control V. Just copy paste and insert a node there that I'm just going to drag all the way up. All right. So let's see actually what that looks like. So I'm curving it slightly just so it kind of matches the top a little bit as well. Let's just try and pull that a little bit. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. So this is a visual thing. I'm looking at the thickness of this here. Do I like that? Let's see what that looks like. Make sure it's larger. Now, Your backlines, for those who've watched these videos before, they always have to be slightly wider. So I'm dragging that a little bit out, so it's wider than our ring. And this, you cannot use the same cross section. We need to use one that's flat. So node and remove that. All right, so we're going to trim the inside out. 1, 2, 3 inside. Make sure you are working on the back relief here. Make sure you're on the back. We do the trim again. Okay, so that's what the back looks like, but let's look at what the front and the back look like. And there I can see now I've trimmed it away, and that looks pretty good. So I only need to trim this section here away. So this is trimming much more than I actually want. So I'm just going to draw a vector up to there, and we are going to remove the inside. Okay, so let me show what I did. I zeroed this area out, which returned this bit of material that it was eating away as well. Right, so we're going to copy this left over right, and we have to do the same on the front side. All right, that looks good. We're going to add that mesh to the assembly. Close with the back relief, and this is square shank hollow. And add to project. And now we're going to put this little sleeve. We're going to make a sleeve that's going to fit inside there. So we'll make a new layer for our sleeve, and we'll call the sleeve. Working on the layer sleeve only, I'm now going to select both of these and close off the ends. Okay, so I've closed off that end, and I've closed off that end there, F12, and I want that to be, let's bring this down, I want that to be at least 1 millimeter in height. Turn off the back. Oops. So make sure we're working on the front side. And we are going to add. There is our sleeve now. But we don't want it to go right through the whole ring, agreed? So let's do it again. It's one thing, if you don't hit add and apply immediately, you lose it. So apply, cancel. So this is the area we want to trim away. So F9 puts it into the center, and let's bring up the shape editor and let's trim that area away. Let me hide the ring away so how far we get into the ring. Let's turn the assembly off. Okay, limit the height to 1 mil exactly. Apply and cancel. So now we've cut that area away. Remember to merge height, and that will remove the part that went beyond the 0. Okay, so I could have zeroed down, I could have just selected the shape editor and 0, but I wanted to give it a slight angle so it stays smooth. Right, so you can add this to the assembly, or you can trim the rest of it away as well. So let's just add the whole thing as it is, because it will still be fine. So you bring up the mesh tool, close with a flat plane. All right, so if you, now we're going to close it with a flat plane. We're just going to close it with a flat plane because we don't want to use the back relief since we don't have a back relief. This is insert, and add to project. All right, let's do a hard save. All right, so now we can go File, Close Model. All right, so let's turn everything back into view. Okay, so there we have our shank. Okay, it's trimmed nicely, open, and let's look at our image. So that's what the old ring looked like. This is what our new ring now looks like. There we go. All right, so next video I'm going to talk about how to cut these finger holes and how to put a faster way of putting a pattern on the sides of your rings. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this video and look forward to seeing you in the next. Thanks. All right, the only thing to do is to add in the stones, which is kind of easy. So we're just going to go to the top plate, double click so it opens up, and you go to the assembly, and let's just bring in one gem. Doesn't matter what size the gem is. We're just going to bring in, let's use a round brilliant, make it a diamond. Actually, I like sizes. So let's go 6.5 by 6.5 by, let's go 4.1. All right, so with that gem highlighted, let's go to our vectors. Let's go to our leaf design on its own. And what we're going to do is, we know the center stone was 5.2. So we're going to draw a center. Let's go 5.2, create, and F9 centers it. All right, so now we're going to select all those stones. Okay, remember that this set on a slight angle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new layer here called stones. Okay, new layer called stones, and I'm going to introduce the angle that we had, which was 13. Add, apply, cancel. So we have this slight dome that we had before, and with that dome highlighted and our stones highlighted, all except, now let's put the center stone on at the same time. We might as well, let's put them all. I select all those vectors. Now sometimes this works with them grouped, sometimes it doesn't. So as a habit, I've just got into ungrouping all the vectors. I then go to round brilliant, copy component to vectors. Okay, so highlighted, copy component to vectors. Why didn't do that? Let's do that again. So round, let's make sure they are selected. Stone 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do that again. Copy component to vectors. Okay. And then we close out the tool. All right, so these then all have to move up. And the last time we moved them up was 10. It was almost 10, let's say 11. It's not enough. Let's go another 1 millimeter. Let's go another 0.1. All right, so now the center stone is still at the bottom. Why didn't I create it? Interesting. Why didn't it? Oh, because I didn't select it. Nice. Okay, so we're going to select that. We'll do the same thing again. Copy component to vector. Go OK. So it's made a single stone for the center for us. Take the center stone now. So I'm going to rename this side stones. Enter, and this was our center stone. the center stone, we're going to move the center stone with a highlighter. We're going to move the center stone up 12.5, a little bit more, 0.5. All right. File, close model. Yeah, we might as well save it. So the main gem we don't need, this gem here we don't need. I'm delete it. All right, there we go. Now we can render it. So view, send to render with keyshot.